What if I told you that within these forgotten woods, a girl was born who carried the weight of generations of secrets on her body? She had no name, no record, no official trace of existence. What she had instead was a mark. 14 toes, a mutation whispered to be the final signature of inbreeding that had plagued her family for decades. Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Locals never spoke her name because she didn't have one. To them, she was simply the girl with no name. A child hidden away like a shameful scar, a reminder of a bloodline turned inward until it warped. This is not just a story about deformity or rumor. This is a story about how an entire community turned its back on one of its own, and in doing so, allowed her life to vanish from history almost entirely. But fragments remain. Over the next half hour, we're going to peel back the rotten layers of this tale, the genealogy of secrecy, the neighbors who pretended not to see, and the cabin that once held a girl the world decided not to remember. But I must warn you, once you hear her story, you will not be able to forget her. The story of the girl with no name does not begin with her birth, but with the soil of Roanoke itself. To outsiders, this region has always been mysterious. From the vanished lost colony to the whispers of families who kept too much to themselves. But to the locals, there were names, faces, and bloodlines everyone knew to avoid. In the early 1900s, on the edge of town, one such family lived in near total isolation. Generations of cousins marrying cousins, brothers taking sisters as wives, and secrets sealed behind cabin walls created a legacy no church sermon could wash away. People said the family carried the curse of deformity, twisted bones, stunted growth, crossed eyes, and minds that didn't develop like other children's. The girl with no name was born into this legacy. Her parents had already been marked by whispers. A father who spoke in broken words, a mother who never left the yard. When she came into the world, she carried a physical sign that could not be hidden. 14 toes, not 12, not 13, 14. 2 extra, curling awkwardly from her feet, like nature's cruel reminder of what happens when bloodlines collapse into themselves. And yet, she was not unloved within her home. Neighbors claimed her mother wrapped her in rags to hide her from prying eyes. Some even whispered that the father sat for hours by the doorway, keeping watch, daring anyone to come close enough to see. But in the end, their isolation was their undoing. Because when a family lives too far from others, rumors grow stronger than facts. The girl with no name became a legend long before she could even walk. Children dared each other to creep toward the cabin and swear they heard crying. Adults muttered that she was proof the bloodline was cursed. No matter the truth, one fact remains. She was kept from the world, and the world pretended she did not exist. It is here, in Timpan, his clash between secrecy and exposure, that the dark history of Roanoke's forgotten victim begins to unfold. By the time the girl with no name was 6 years old, the town of Roanoke already knew of her existence, though few had seen her with their own eyes. Stories carried faster than footsteps. A cousin's cousin claimed he'd seen her running barefoot in the yard, her strange feet leaving crooked prints in the mud. A delivery man swore he heard a child crying when he dropped supplies at the edge of the family's property, though no one came out to take them. But whispers are not harmless. They grow, like weeds. The town began to treat the family like ghosts walking among them. Shopkeepers avoided speaking their names. School teachers whispered warnings to children never to wander into the woods near their home. Even preachers lowered their voices, saying that some bloodlines were too far gone to save. The girl's world was shrinking. She was not sent to school. She was not baptized in the church. She did not appear in county records, census forms, or photographs. To the world, she was nothing. Yet the locals knew better. They simply chose to look away. It's here the story takes on a cruel paradox. The girl with no name was both invisible and unforgettable. Those who claimed to have seen her described her face as hauntingly blank, her eyes wide but unfocused, as if she was staring at something no one else could see. Some said her hair hung in tangled ropes, never brushed. Others whispered she had a strange gait when she walked, a lurching shuffle that made her footsteps sound uneven, like two people walking instead of one. Still, the family clung to her. They tried to hide her from outsiders, but hiding only made the story grow darker. Roanoke is a town that thrives on mystery, and when there are no facts, the imagination invents horrors far worse than the truth. The tragedy, of course, is that the girl with no name never asked to be born into this history, yet she carried its burden on her body every single day. And as the years went by, she became not just a hidden child, but the very embodiment of the town's darkest fears. As the girl with no name grew older, the stories about her only deepened. She became less a child and more a rumor, a half-glimpsed figure moving through the woods. Locals claimed she appeared suddenly on moonless nights, her pale skin reflecting like bone in the darkness, before vanishing back into the trees. The family no longer came into town. They relied on distant cousins and whispered arrangements to survive. Food was dropped at the edge of their land, sometimes paid for, sometimes not. A silent exchange. Necessities left behind, shame collected in return. The town did not want them, yet it could not quite cut them off either. In this uneasy arrangement, the girl with no name slipped further away from the world. By the time she reached her teenage years, she was said to have grown taller than expected, her limbs long but awkwardly bent, as if her bones themselves did not know how to carry her. The extra toes were still there, now a permanent marker of the bloodline that made her both feared and forgotten. Witnesses spoke of her lopsided stride, how she leaned on trees for balance when she thought no one was looking. But the strangest detail wasn't her appearance. It was the sound. Several townsfolk swore they heard her voice when passing near the property. Not words, not songs, but humming. A low, eerie hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Some believed it was a lullaby passed down through the family, one only sung to children, doomed to never be named. Others said it was no lullaby at all, but a sign her mind had broken under the weight of her isolation. In the town of Roanoke, she became more than a hidden child. She became an omen, a walking symbol of what happens when people turn inward, when shame is buried instead of faced. Parents warned their children, stray too far into the woods and you'll hear her humming. Stray closer still, and you'll never come back. But what happened next pushed the story from whispered rumor into something much darker. Because after years of eerie sightings and hushed confessions, the girl with no name suddenly disappeared. No one in Roanoke knows the exact day the girl with no name vanished. There was no search party, no missing person report. How can you report someone missing when they were never acknowledged to exist? And yet, quietly, people noticed. The family's yard grew still. The faint sounds of shuffling footsteps, the humming in the woods. All of it fell silent. Some said she died of illness, her body buried in an unmarked grave somewhere on the property, hidden beneath the roots of an oak tree. Others swore she was taken by the very woods themselves, swallowed into the shadows she had wandered for so long. And then there were darker whispers, that her family had chosen to end her life, not out of cruelty, but because the weight of her existence had become too heavy to bear. The truth has never been uncovered, but silence in a town like Roanoke is never innocent. When questions arose, the family refused to speak. When outsiders pried too closely, doors were slammed shut. It was as if they wanted her memory to vanish along with her body. Yet, traces lingered. Hunters swore they found small, crooked footprints leading nowhere. A boy claimed he stumbled across a cloth doll hanging from a tree, its tiny sewn feet marked with extra stitches. And years later, when the cabin itself finally collapsed into ruin, neighbors whispered they heard a voice, faint, humming through the woods, as if she had never left at all. This is the cruelest part of her story. For a child without a name, there is no grave, no marker, no proof she ever walked this earth. Only the whispers of those too afraid to look her in the eye while she lived. And yet here you are, hearing her story, a story most of Roanoke tried to bury, which raises a chilling question. If she was truly gone, why did so many people swear they could still feel her presence long after her disappearance? If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments. What would you have done if this was your bloodline? In Roanoke, silence has always been its own kind of grave. Families bury their shame, not with shovels, but with secrets, leaving the earth above undisturbed while the rot festers below. The girl with no name became one of those secrets. Her family lived on, her bloodline stretching quietly into the present, but her existence was erased, denied, and unspoken. Yet secrets have a way of bleeding through generations. Those who trace their ancestry in Roanoke sometimes stumble across gaps, missing branches, or birth records that seem to vanish into thin air. And when pressed, elders grow uneasy, muttering about bad blood, or changing the subject altogether. It is as if everyone knows something, but no one dares to say it aloud. There are locals, even today, who swear they have seen her. A pale figure wandering the woods at dusk, barefoot, leaving no sound on the earth. Others claim that on still nights, if you walk past the ruins of her family's cabin, you can hear the faintest sound of humming, carried on the wind. A lullaby for a child the world refused to name. This haunting legacy is more than superstition. It reflects the darkest parts of America's forgotten history, where shame and secrecy were buried so deep, they became folklore. For the people of Roanoke, the girl with no name was not simply a child of inbreeding. She was a living reminder that silence can kill as surely as disease, and that memory itself can be stolen. What is most unsettling is how many people still feel tied to her, as if she has become a phantom thread running through the region's bloodlines. It is not uncommon to hear of relatives who refuse to speak of their grandparents, or cousins who change their last names entirely to avoid the association. Perhaps it is guilt, perhaps it is fear, or perhaps in some uncanny way, her presence is still alive, passed down through those who try hardest to deny her. The girl with no name may never be found, but her story lingers like a ghost, reminding us that forgetting someone does not erase them. It only ensures they haunt us forever. History is often written by those who survive, but sometimes it's shaped just as much by those who are erased. The girl with no name, born with 14 toes, hidden in a cabin on the edge of Roanoke, was never meant to be remembered. Her family concealed her. The town ignored her. Records refused to acknowledge her. And yet, here you are, hearing her story. What does that say about us? That even the forgotten have a way of clawing back into memory, dragging their truths into the light, no matter how long we try to bury them. Perhaps she was buried in the woods, in an unmarked grave that has long since disappeared beneath leaves and roots. Perhaps she still wanders, humming her wordless lullaby to anyone unlucky enough to pass too close to her family's ruins. Or perhaps the real haunting lies not in her ghost, but in the silence of an entire community that chose to pretend she never existed. The girl with no name was more than a child of inbreeding. She was the embodiment of generational shame, of secrets too dark to be written in ledgers, of lives erased not by death, but by deliberate forgetting. And if her story unsettles you, that is because it should. It forces us to confront the darkest truth of all, that the cruelty of silence can be as monstrous as any deformity. So tonight, as you leave this story behind, remember her. Remember the child with no name, the girl with 14 toes, the one Roanoke tried to erase. Because if you forget her, you're doing exactly what they did. And some stories, no matter how disturbing, demand to be told. Thank you for watching. If this story haunted you, make sure to subscribe and share it so others can uncover the buried past as well. And let me know in the comments. Do you believe she still walks the woods, or was she buried long ago? One thing is certain, forgotten or not, she is still here, in the soil, in the silence, and now in your memory.